I've had it on the tiller again, having done a bit more on the belly, and it was pulling 50 at about 23 inches or thereabouts, getting very close now, 23, 24. I thought what I'd do is just even up the bit of reflex on the upper limb. So what I did is I took one of my old scraps of timber that I've used as a form to bend against before, and I just sawed it out slightly, adjusted it slightly to pretty much match the lower limb, and I'll pull the upper limb down onto that and reheat treat the tip. That's only going to be pulling back, what's that, about an inch and a bit or so, you know, so it's not going to overstress it too much. Now this gives a better idea of how I'll be bending down that limb. You can see it conforms fairly well to this curve anyway. It's just a little bit, it's barely a couple of fingers width, and pulling it down, just finger pressure gets it down there. So I'm not overstressing the limb, and everyone always says, well, you see I'm not actually fully clamped down there yet, just a tiny gap. But you should never bend a bow the wrong way, and don't try and make too tight a bend with dry heat. But this is just, you know, a very slight curve, and as I said, I'll be heating the wood up first. Yeah, I've got no real worries about it cracking the belly. If I tried to bend it really tight, I'd get cracks coming across here. I don't think that's going to happen. Of course it might. We'll see. I probably should have quit while I was ahead and left the bow alone, but I went along and heat treated both limbs to try and get them back to an even state, and put a hint of reflex back in that top limb over there. Of course, having done that and tried to brace it, I now find the bottom limb is much stiffer than the right, and also the string line's gone a bit to cock. So you can see the limb where I've got my hand holding has kicked over that way to the right. It's got a bit of twist, sort of twist and bend. I was a bit despondent, to be honest, for a couple of minutes, but it wasn't as bad as it was before. This left limb's showing stiff, and I've got a nice lot of reflex there. So I eased a bit off the belly, tried to adjust the string line here. You can see I've removed where I'm tapping with my finger. I've narrowed that a bit, but it's basically, and it's always been twisted, but I think heat treating it sort of softened the wood and let the original stresses that were in the limb come back, if you like. Because right at the beginning of the process I had to do quite a lot of steam bending and twisting and Lord knows what. So I'll probably just warm it up and get some twist onto this limb and maybe try and pull it that way a bit. But the act of untwisting it will probably help considerably, because it needs to rotate that way, which because of the reflex will pull the tip across. But I'll think about it a bit. I'll jig it up carefully. The big question for me is, do I try and do it quick and dirty with dry heat, or do I get the steamer out and do that? I think the real answer is just to be careful and take my time. I'll pop a string on it and brace it now so you can just see. There we can see it's not that bad because the changes I've made already have improved it significantly, but you can see this limb is stiff. And if we look at the string line, it's over to the right there. But yeah, it's not, it's like I say, it's successive approximation. It would have been tempting to think, oh, I should have just left the damn thing alone. But yeah, we'll get there. Panic not. It's not that far out. But it's the string line that's the more worrying thing. I mean, you could just argue that that's a bit of positive tiller, lower limb stiff, as they generally are. Right, here's the setup for the bending. I've got the lever clamped on. I've got this scrap of ash here to act as my reference so that I don't pull the limb too far back that way. Let's just get them, I might adjust that slightly. Blocks of wood under to make sure I don't lift that limb too much. This is just to make sure the twist starts here rather than, you know, affecting this limb. It's just to sort of steady that, if you like. Clamps up here, that's my sort of reference. This limb's my reference. Again, a block under here, so if I try and lift that end, if I try and lift that far end, you can't push that down. Hopefully it should be fairly solid. Really, it's a matter of getting the hot air gun on it and feeling when it starts to move. I always use a fishtail nozzle, it just helps spread the heat. And I can twist, you can see the sort of pressure I'm applying with a finger. So I should be able to feel when it starts to move easier. Once that happens, I can tie this back to there with a little string. Now the memory card on the camera filled up and it stopped. So anyway, here we are with the spanner tied in position. And you can see that's taken the twist out. Now that was about an hour ago, so if I undo the lever, hopefully we'll see how much it's bounced back. Let's just slide that off the top. There we go, that's gone back to there, which I think is more vertical than it was before. And that certainly, well, I think it looks better. Won't know till I try and brace it. We'll see. Ah yes, that certainly looks better. Certainly looks better. I've just rasped it slightly there where the string was sitting, just to get it a bit nearer that line. Rasped off the corners of the belly, just a little bit on this limb that was too stiff. Haven't done too much, and I've pulled it a few times, not a great distance, but I won't put it on the tiller and pull it right back till tomorrow when it's had a bit of a chance to relax, or people say it needs to rehydrate after heat treating. I don't know how true that is really, but I think just leaving it overnight doesn't do any harm. But you can see just that little bit of work has made it look much more even. The lower limb still a whisker stiffer, but barely any more than you'd expect, you know, for the normal tillering of a bow. It's looking better. Remember, it is still a low brace. I mean, if I put my hand there, you'll see it's well short of a full brace. So I'm still proceeding slowly, but we're getting there. We are getting there at last. And hopefully I won't need to take off too much of that heat treating to get it right back to full draw weight, draw length, because I'll probably, you know, start fine-tuning, narrowing, rounding the corners, back and belly, so on and so forth. That'll do for now. Watch your space.